Hi, this is Mark. This is the intro so that people have an understanding of what I'm doing with this, or proposing to do with this liability, notice of liability. So the first thing is to establish law. What is the law and what's the precedence? And as you'll see, the monarch has full authority, power and control in the UK. So, starting by understanding your sovereignty. Who are you? What are you? What power do you have? Each human is born an equal, highest authority on this planet, and there are no exceptions. Your belief system makes you think otherwise. Your belief system is nothing more than the result of your upbringing, your social conditioning. Test your belief system and regain your sovereignty. If only 10% of any society would understand this, the world will change within a matter of days of those in power getting the message. So please, take a bit of time to understand this so that we can change the world. Very quickly, this whole thing is very quick. I've been up for like 36 hours trying to get this together with the notice of liability, so if there are a few mistakes or hiccup and stuff like that, please forgive me. So just starting off with a bit of history from ancient to modern history. The law of conquest, might is right. The biggest bully bestows privileges upon his select few, who are individually only strong enough to enforce on a local basis against his central might, and in turn bestowed privileges to those locals to do the same on their behalf. So, sharing out the pie to keep the balance so the slaves did not rebel, some crumbs were allowed to fall off the table, and violence to those that wanted more. Continuation of history. Every now and then the slaves rebelled. So sharing out the pie needs to be rebalanced a little bit so that slaves stop rebelling, often just remarketed, like in fashion industry. For example, setting up the parliament of your mates or rigged democracies. Often though, also a few more crumbs would be allowed to fall off the table, and more violence was applied to those that still wanted more than most. So where are we today? Well, the law of conquest, might is right. Every few generations the fight is forgotten. Sharing out the pie needs to be rebalanced as arrogance and opulence sets in governance. For example, tax increases, reduction of human rights won by forefathers in previous rebellions. Slowly, until the slaves rebel again. And often a few more crumbs might be allowed to fall on the table, but more than often, violence is initially used by those that want more. So, KMA, there's your example. These are all signs of the end of an empire, and end of a system. So, looking at law, and I distinguish lawful from legal in that lawful is from the Creator, whereas legal is any man-made law. The highest law is the law of creation, and this is pretty much globally acknowledged. And no one on earth can prove other than equal authority. So it doesn't matter what their belief system is. No one has authority to knowingly cause another creation harm. No one has authority to take beyond their needs for survival. And all are equal shareholders in global resources. Those are the logical and only reasoned conclusions that can be reached in truth. The next highest law is private law, which is a private contract between consenting humans. This is then followed by the first form of social law, or forms of governance, which is common law in much of the British areas of the world, where the law is judged by a jury of fellows as well as the guilt. The judge is merely the chairman to keep proceedings orderly and the clerk to keep the public record. So what's the legal structure in UK? Below the common law stands the law of the church, and the monarch stands below it. This we know because the monarch swears an oath on the Bible. The Archbishop asks, will you do your utmost of your power to maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel? Will you to the utmost of your power maintain the United Kingdom, the Protestant Reformed religion established by law? Will you maintain and preserve inviolably the settlement of the Church of England and the doctrine, worship, discipline and government thereof, as by law established in England? And will you preserve unto the bishops and clergy of England, and to the churches there committed to their charge, all such rights and privileges as by law do, or shall appertain to them, or any of them? To which the Queen responded, all this I will promise to do. So below the Queen then, you have the monarch's administration. They administer the Queen's wishes. Below this, all of them swear oaths to the monarch. So that's where their oath lies, and they for a large number of administrative offices, the people are required to take an oath on the New Testament since 1978, and for Jews on the Old Testament. Or if you don't want to swear an oath, or you're not a Christian or a Jew, you can make an affidavit. You need to look at the specific laws, but essentially in common it is along the following lines, which comes from the Promissory Oaths Act 1868, most of which is still standing. Part 1. The Oath of Allegiance, Official and Judicial Oaths. I, and then they state their name, do swear that I will well and truly serve Her Majesty, whoever the current Queen is, in the office of, whatever it's going to be, the office they'll hold, so help me God. So again, reiterating and telling us quite clearly that the Queen is the highest law, the highest administrator of the social system, and she runs the administrative office on behalf of the people. So this is what we've got in a quick summary. The highest law is the law of creation. We are all sovereign humans of equal authority. The next highest is private law, which is a private agreement between two or more people. This is followed by the common law, which is established through precedents. Then only comes God's law, because society was around before King James in 1611. And as we've seen, the monarchy falls below God's law. As you can see, the power and authority comes from the sovereign humans, and the responsibility flows back from where authority has been delegated. We don't have rights, we have authority. We delegate to the governance system to uphold certain rights. So how do we go about reinstating the rule of law? Might is right only works as long as that at least sorry, I'll just need to read this again, sorry. Might is right only works as long as that 10% of extremists manage to keep the 80% accepting that belief system. So to re-establish it, we only need 10% of the people to understand their sovereignty, understand for a peaceful society there can be no privilege and all are equal under the law, understand the might is right 10% gain their authority from these 10%, and these 10% need the courage to stop supporting the might is right 10%. Who they are and the rabbit holes you can run down is really very irrelevant if you understand and believe and live the law of creation, as no one on earth can prove other than equal authority. Accordingly, no one has authority to knowingly cause another creation harm. No one has authority to take beyond their need for survival. All are equal shareholders in global resources. The law of creation, as no one on earth can prove other than equal authority, this is confirmed both in the Bible and under common law. The common law reflects the laws as recorded in the group of books commonly referred to as the Holy Bible and is verified by Sir William Blackstone in his published commentaries. And in addition to the Bible, there are legal maxims, all are equal under the law, and this is confirmed in the Bible. It's God's law, ethical and natural law under Exodus 21:23 to 25, Leviticus 24:17 to 21, Deuteronomy 1:17, 19, 21, Matthew, Luke, blah blah. No one is above the law is another legal maxim. And commerce by the law of nations ought to be common and not to be converted into a monopoly and the private gain of a few. And the final maxim is, in commerce, truth is sovereign. Again, the references are there if you want to check them. With the exception of equal shareholders in all creation, which is only in the Bible, this is in Genesis 1:26, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." It does not say the Pope. It does not say the head of the Church of England. It says all men, which is overruled by the superior law of creation, hence all humans. Oopsie daisy. Oh, no, this is a good one as well. On the last slide I forgot to say, Subabai Papal Bull Unum Sanctum of 1215 from the Vatican, where the Pope claims via Genesis that he is the highest authority, given that authority from God as his representative on earth. So the limits of your authority: the only possible way to knowingly cause no harm to another creation is the only law required. But it has one major problem beyond meeting one's needs of survival, as no one has authority to take more than they need. On the assumption that humanity wants to progress with peaceful coexistence, we need to drastically change our ways, as already too many fellow humans don't have adequate shelter, food and clean water. But that is totally different philosophical discussion from what I want to get across today. We know we can do better than we are doing now, so let's return to the rule of law, as without that there is no reason to be in society as a first step. Many of us ask, why do I have no power, or why do I feel no power? You need to understand and believe and live. A democratically elected governments is merely the administrative offices filled by officers who we think are meant to represent us. As has been shown, all power by authority still lies with the monarchy, and the government is merely the administrative office of the monarchy. That explains why many feel there is also no rule of law. Simply, we have been socially conditioned to believe elected officials are meant to represent us, and our vote makes a difference. Statute law is merely administrative policy. They even tell you that this is not law. Parliament and Lords prepare bills, and once agreed, they pass them to the monarch for approval, which is when they become acts. So, now to the important bit. Hopefully you understand that we actually hold the sovereignty, we hold the power, and we delegate it. The way that we delegate it is by contract. So, sovereign humans contract into private law with individuals. Once a society is formed, a set of norms develop, which are known as common law. And historically, certainly in the UK, religion then took over, and God's law, again, can only be by contract to be lawful. And then the delegation of the administration by the people, the sovereigns, to the monarch, again, should be by contract. This is a de jure system, as opposed to a de facto might is right system, which the Western world lives under, or much of the world lives under. All contracting is by consent. You must understand this. If you do not understand it, go back to the beginning. So, interaction is by contract. What is a contract? A contract requires an offer. It's a negotiation to meeting of the minds, which is full disclosure, which includes not knowingly withholding any potentially harmful information. Then it's an acceptance of an offer, of the offer, or the renegotiated offer by both parties, and the exchange must include equal value. If any terms are not disclosed, there has not been a meeting of the minds, and hence the contract is unlawful. So consent is an interesting word. However, in the definition of a contract, consent is the negotiation where to meet for the minds to meet, where there's full disclosure and not knowingly withholding any potentially harmful information. If any terms are not disclosed, there has not been a meeting of the minds, and hence the contract is unlawful. There's not been consent if there's information being withheld. Again, so what's a lawful contract? Your word is your bond. Numbers chapter 30 verses 1 to 2. He shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. Leviticus chapter 5 verses 3 to 5. 4. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty of one of these. Obviously, just a verbal contract is difficult to verify. And if there's a conflict, again, we've got the references. Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 6, 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses. Chapter 19 verse 15, 2 witnesses. Matthew chapter 18 verse 16, 2 or 3 witnesses. Corinthians, 2 witnesses. Hebrews, 2 or 3 witnesses. And this is to establish every word. Contract procedures. To reduce potential conflict in the future, it's best to have a written contract with 2 witnesses. It's often not possible, so next best is a verbal contract with 2 witnesses, plus video recording, and write down a statement of facts whilst it's still fresh in your mind. Next best thing is without the video recording, i.e. with 2 witnesses. All of this is based above the administrative law so far. If anyone approaches you where you might feel you need a witness, ask people around you to be your witnesses. Your request cannot lawfully be refused by any actor, i.e. police, etc., as God's law stands above statute law. And again, the references. With the exception if you have contracted by giving your consent to fall under statute law. So hopefully now you see how by contract we move from sovereign humans into private law, into common law, into God's law, into the administrative system of the monarchy or our governance. Each step requires a lawful contract. You have the power and authority, they have the responsibility. So legal, again, just to reiterate, to me lawful is the law of creation, i.e. not man-made law. Man-made law is legal and is based on a belief system. So the word jurisdiction is a big word in a language commonly known as legalese. But we don't learn legalese at school, we learn English, and that's part of the way that we're brought up into the belief system. So jurisdiction simply means, what law have I contracted with my consent? If you have not consented, remember the contract is not valid as it's an unlawful contract. So that's the end of the intro. If you understand this, I'll try now to get the liability notice explanation done in the context so you can see how this is above statutory law, i.e. above the Queen's law. This is higher law and hence takes precedence, and that is what I've based my notice of liability on. I hope it hasn't been too boring and too disjointed, but I am a bit knackered. I shall plough on and hopefully get my affidavit signed tomorrow.